Good day traders, this is Stefanos on behalf of Tixee, and in today's webinar we'll be giving an outlook of the market for the week of the 8th until the 12th of August. Now, looking at some of the highlights for next week, in the stocks front, as we've been mentioning over the past couple of weeks, and as it has been the recurring theme over the past couple of weeks, we of course have the earnings season with yet another jam-packed week. And on this occasion, we're actually going to have more than 5,000 stocks reporting their figures, such as the like of Disney as well, which we're going to be covering later on. But first, a disclaimer, as always, please note that all of the ideas discussed in the webinar are my own opinions and do not make up for any form of investment or trading advice, neither any recommendations to buy or sell. You should always do your own research and due diligence before buying or selling any securities, financial products, or instruments, and whether you use any kind of trading strategies. That information that relates to past performance is not indicative of future results. So, as we mentioned during the intro, for next week there's going to be more than 5,000 stocks reporting their figures. Like I've mentioned this a couple of times before as well, that Market Insider is the earnings calendar that is the one that I prefer using with regards to covering the stocks that are going to be reporting their figures. The reason being, it's a pretty simplistic UI. You can pretty much choose the filters here as to which day or which week you want to be paying attention to. And in this little box, it's going to show you the total number of stocks that have an earnings report or some sort of important announcement on a particular date. Of course, you can use the one of your preference. I'm just putting it out here simply because it's just super simple, no ads or anything around it, and you can just pretty much you just get what you want, which is pretty much just to see the companies reporting their figures, and of course on which date as well. So yeah, as you can see by the little box here, next week we have 5,329 companies reporting their numbers, which if you've been tuned in on the past couple of webinars, you will know that this is pretty much the highest figure yet. So definitely going to be a super active week next week. Now, the one that is also listed on Tixee's platform is Walt Disney, and it's going to be reporting its figures on the 10th of August, and it's going to be after the market close. Now, after the market close, obviously, this means that it's going to, I kind of wish I could have like a live poll right now, because it's something we've been stressing over for the past couple, since the beginning of the earnings season. Essentially, that's quite important to pay attention to the time of the release, whether it's in the pre-market or after the market close. Since this one is after the market close, the impact will be seen on the very next day with the open. So yeah, definitely pay attention. If you're going to be trading Walt Disney, obviously it depends. If you want to position yourself earlier, of course you can do that. But if you want to wait for the report first, then the day following the release, which is going to be then the 11th of August, is when we're expecting to see the impact of the earnings report itself. Now, if we want to cover Disney's earnings performance, out of the last 10 reports, it's beaten the EPS estimate 7 times out of 10, while the revenue estimate was beaten 6 times out of 10. So far on the year though, if we want to cover the year-to-date performance, and we can just pretty much see it quite easily from here as well. So I'll switch to Disney and set this to year-to-date. You can just pretty much measure from the open here to the current market price. We're pretty much close to being down 30% on the year. Now, of course, even though this is the only stock that's listed on Tixee that's going to be reporting the figures, it doesn't mean by no means that it's going to be a relatively slow week. Obviously, the fact that it's just Disney also doesn't mean that it's the only stock of interest, because obviously you have other stocks reporting that, depending on the sector, it obviously could affect other stocks that are already listed on Tixee's platform. So again, if you use, for example, the earnings calendar of your preference, you can have a look at the stocks, and then what you can do is just navigate to the home page, go to the stock section here. You can scroll down, and you can pretty much see all of the stocks that are listed here. I just prefer doing Control F. It's going to be Command F if you're on Mac, and you can just pretty much search the ticker to see which ones are available. But nevertheless, if, for example, if we have a look, let's say, just to make my point clear. So as we said, we have Disney. There's also Aramco, which is obviously in the oil energy sector, which is going to be releasing the figures on the 14th of August. Now, Aramco is not listed on tixee's platform, but what we do know is that we have, for example, BP. So if you search British Petroleum, you're going to see it here. So depending on the release of Aramco, I mean, obviously it doesn't mean if it's positive, BP is going to be positive. What it means is that it's likely going to heighten volatility around the other stocks that are in the energy sector as well. So this is what I mean by saying that even though it's just Disney, it doesn't mean it's the only one that you should be paying attention to, because other sector related stocks could be affected between each other as well. So yeah, this is with regards to stocks. Now moving on to Forex, we're going to stay on tixee's website. You can find the economic calendar if you go to the education research tab and then click on the economic calendar itself. And from here, just like with the earnings calendar, you can use the filters to readjust the data according to your liking. We're going to set it to next week, medium, high impact event, and always pay attention to the timing here because it's going to affect the times that you see for the events here as well. So definitely you want to be looking at the right time zone. Otherwise, you're going to be missing the actual release of the particular event you're looking at. So starting with Monday, it's going to be a quite thin day, if we want to put it that way, with regards to the economic calendar. We're still going to have unemployment data coming out of Switzerland at 6:45 a.m. was the medium impact event. And then moving on to Tuesday, we get the first kind of high impact events for the week, and they're coming out of Australia. Specifically, it's going to be consumer confidence figures, both from Westpac and NAB. And those are going to be released at 1:30 in the morning and 2:30 a.m. respectively. And always you can use the tooltip here just to have an idea of what kind of volatility you can expect in the hours following these particular events. Then moving towards midday, we're going to be having inflation data from Mexico, if exotics are the currency pairs of your choice. And then also inflation data from Brazil, if you're going to be trading the Brazilian real, for example. Then moving on to Wednesday, the first high impact event of the day is going to come out of China, and it's going to be inflation data at 2:30 a.m. We're also going to get production output figures as well, around about the same time. So it's pretty much three different events at the same time. And then in the regular EU session, we're going to have inflation data from Germany. Later on, after Germany, unemployment data is going to follow suit from Turkey at 8 a.m. and then inflation data from Italy. And then going towards midday UK time, inflation data is going to be the event of focus again, but this time from the US, and it's going to be the second and third high impact event of the day. Next up, moving on to Thursday, you're going to get production output figures from the US as the only high impact event of the day. It's going to be at 1:30 again UK time. And then closing on Friday, it's going to be, as you can see here, it's going to be a UK focused day, with the first high impact events of the day coming out of the UK at 7 a.m. We're going to be having GDP data, and then it's going to be followed by trade balance figures. But as you can see, all of these events are going to be released at the same time. So it's definitely going to be impacting, as one would expect, the pound dollar specifically. And then also have some inflation data from the EU again, this time from France and Spain as well. And then for the last high impact event of the day and the week itself, we're going to get consumer sentiment figures from the US at 3 in the afternoon. And that's covering Forex. And since we're looking at the economic calendar, the other kind of event we want to be paying attention to if you're trading commodities is obviously going to be the weekly oil inventory report, which is going to come out the usual on Wednesday at 3:30 in the afternoon. So since we're on the topic of commodities as well, aside from the oil inventory report, which we can pay attention to for oil, if you want to be discussing gold particularly, I would say the one event to monitor would be the situation between China and Taiwan, since, as we said during the look back as well, US spokesperson Pelosi visited Taiwan earlier this week. I believe it was on Wednesday or Tuesday it was. And China did vow to retaliate should the meeting go ahead. And since it did, China kept its promise, and they're pretty much holding military drills off the coast of Taiwan. Now, obviously, this leads to heightened geopolitical tensions, which is playing in the hands of gold specifically. So if I pull up the charts, if you were tuned in for the look back, you're going to see that it's pretty much had now its third consecutive week in the green. So obviously, if we get any more updates with regards to the situation between China and Taiwan, and if the situation worsens with regards to the military drills, because they have carried out drills with live fire as well as missile fire tests as well. So I don't know how much worse it can get, but obviously any more news we get on that is obviously going to be impacting gold prices directly. So yeah, definitely one of the commodities that is going to be of interest for the next few weeks. And then lastly, on to cryptos. So let's pull up the chart of Bitcoin, dollar. It's been one that I've been discussing over the past few weeks quite actively. But as you can see, it hasn't really made any significant movement. It looks like it's been in sort of a limbo since, I'd say, end of June, beginning of July. As you can see, yeah, it is moving higher, but the candlesticks that it's printing are quite small, relatively speaking, to the ones where the downtrend movement took place right here. Of course, we're still going to be keeping these areas that we have in red marked out, because those are, at least in my opinion, of interest, at least to me, because as we can see, this is where prices stalled or rejected in the past. So we could see just crawling its way back up into this zone, and if it carries on doing these slow movements, sort of like sideways movements, then we could expect seeing prices moving strongly further to the downside. However, if it starts popping higher and higher with printing bigger green candlesticks, obviously if it breaks strongly above this area and then just starts consolidating this way, then we can expect to see prices moving back towards the upside. So yeah, it definitely depends what kind of price behavior you're going to have around this area when price starts trading into these levels. And we can obviously see how we can position ourselves, because as you can see here, it was just consolidating sideways, and then it finally broke out strongly with this candlestick and continued moving down since that point. And since reaching this level here, we've just been consolidating on the side, sideways, but a little bit towards the upside as well. So we're gonna be looking to see where prices are gonna stall and start moving flat sideways, just to start getting the hint as to where the prices could be moving next. If we want to look at the moving averages, they are closely. Let me just remove some of the lines just to make it a little clearer. So yeah, the moving averages are starting to come close together. So you can see the 8 period may starts curling back towards the upside, but again, they're still pretty far away from each other. So obviously, as prices come back up into this area, if they do so, obviously we can expect a behavior of the moving averages similar to this. So they're gonna they're gonna start contracting again before we get the next expansion. And yeah, this as far as the outlook for next week's markets. I hope you enjoyed the video and you found it useful, and I'll catch you on the next one. Until then, trade safe.